Hey everybody, what's going on? Eric here, and back again with the top of the BC Rich Mockingbird now. And as you can see, I've sanded it. It's got a haze over it and not very shiny. Got around the controls a little bit because usually that's where it mostly gets scratched up here, over here. Some scratching that was going on over here. And it's got a little bit of a fog to it right now because I went one step further with my wet sanding. I ended up going with a 1500 to remove the scratches, 2000, and then I went with a 2500 to make sure that this is going to be really, really nice. And then again, I'll go over it with a 3000. Now, I did find, which is really surprising, on the back I didn't find really any orange peel, but there was some orange peel around here. There was some orange peel up at the top, and there was some orange peel over here. Some pretty good scratching around the controls, some pretty good scratching at the top over here, mostly pick scratches around this area. And there was some pretty good deep scratches that were around this area. And that's all taken care of. As you can see, you don't see any shiny spots. A lot of orange peel would show like shiny spots between the dowel. And deep scratches would also show like a shiny spot. You'll still be able to see a scratch inside the finish and everything. So everything's coming along pretty damn good. But there's a couple things I want to go over with you about wet sanding. Now, I've seen me use a block before and how I use the wet sanding with a block. Now this is freehand because this has an arch top on it, and in order to do it the correct way, around the areas that have a bend on it, you want to use something that has a radius when sanding it, and to be able to do it the right way. But there's also a way you could do this without having to use a radius block, something that has a little bit of a curve to it that could fit inside of here, and you can get this real nice and follow the body with it. With automotive, it's kind of a necessary thing because you don't want to have wavy spots in your finish or anything else. You want to have a nice, flat, smooth finish. With this here, again, there's another way you could do this without having any type of a problem with it being wavy and look all flat. Now, when you're sanding, okay, you want to go, especially a freehand, you get yourself a piece of paper. Right here, I got some 2500 grit. First of all, you really want to let your paper sit and soak up the water, and quite a few hours will do that. If you're in a rush to get this done, don't be, because getting the sandpaper saturated really helps with how it's being used. So if you're doing a small area or something, you have a bend or whatever, just take your fingers and kind of lay them like this. Don't go like this with the sandpaper, because each finger will put an indentation inside of your finish, and what I'll end up doing is making it all wavy. So what you want to do is you want to go side to side lightly, and your fingers are basically following the contour of the body of the curve in the guitar. And again, you don't have to put a lot of pressure on this, especially after going over it with a much coarser grit sandpaper. But you want to go side to side. Never go like this with it. Like I said, your fingertips will end up putting pressure, and you'll have waves in your finish when you're done. But I don't have to do anything now as far as sanding it, because it's basically ready for the 3000 grit sandpaper. Hey everybody, what's going on? Eric here, and try to make this as short as possible and try to get as much information in as I can. Right now, if you're hearing a little bit of background noise, that is the exhaust fan for this little workshop right now. And I'm ready to hit this with the 3000 grit sandpaper before I hand polish it. Now I knocked out all the scratches that were on here, starting off with the 1500 grit. Not too aggressive, but worked very well as far as getting rid of some of the scratches that were, or all the scratches that were on here. And there's nothing that was really deep on the front that was like on the back, so I really didn't have to sit there and really work this too much. Again, there was some scratching over here, some deep scratching over here, and some scratching over in this area, and some minor scratching around the controls. It wasn't too bad, but bad enough. So what I have is some 3000 grit sandpaper, a new cutoff piece. Now this acts like a sponge, so it's going to hold water, so you might want to wring it out a little bit. There's a little bit of soap inside of my water that helps the paper lubricate itself to where it slides over your finish without the paper sticking to the finish itself. That's what makes it really easier to go over it with the 1500, 2000, 2500 grit paper, and this will help this as well. So again, no going up and down, because this will show your fingerprints and you'll have a wavy finish. So again, you want to go side to side, and when you get into like a small area like this, you kind of go into a circular motion. Get as close as to the controls and everything else as possible. And again, I don't have a lot of water on here, but I have enough water that it's going to let the paper do its job. And I just want to go over the areas that I ended up sanding. And again, you might see a little bit of a milkiness, not as much as you would with the other papers. Now normally, if this was an automobile, it'd be block sanded. And because of this little contour and the raised top on this, I would use something that had a radius in it to go with that radius that's in the body, just like I would do on an automobile. It makes a lot better of a finish after buffing it, and you don't see any waves. Everything is nice and flat. But because this is such a small area, I don't have anything but maybe a small dowel rod, but I would want it to be a little bit flexible, because this has got a curve to it, and there's some tight curves up here and a tight curve over here. So I'm not using that. I'm just letting the paper, especially being folded like this, it will contour into that itself. And again, you want to go side to side. You don't want to go front and back with your hands like this. Now, I really didn't hit here, and I didn't hit here because it seems like there's nothing, no scratches at all in these two areas. So it's just basically all out on the outside of the body. And I will be going over this probably I don't know, maybe 5 times, just to get rid of all of these scratches from the previous paper. I am adding a little bit of pressure to it, not a lot, but I'm adding a little bit of pressure to this paper, or pad, or whatever you want to call it. And again, you want to be careful that you don't go through your finish. Now, the likely of a 3000 grit going through the finish would be an awfully thin finish if that were to happen. And I can guarantee you with these guitars, well, I can't guarantee you, but from experience of what I've been doing with these guitars and stuff, they really put a pretty good finish on these things to try to protect them. So as I can see, I don't know if you could see it or not, but this haze is kind of lightened up, and I'm starting to see a reflection of my hand in there. So it's getting to where I want it. It's not where I want it just yet. I want to go over this a few more times, because I can still see some of the 1000 grit, or not 1000, but the 2500 grit scratches inside here when I was sanded over. So I want to remove that. Now, in order to get a mirror finish by hand, it takes a lot. I'm not using a mechanical, I'm not using anything that's mechanical to buff this out, basically elbow grease, and it takes a lot to polish something out by hand. Using a 3000 grit sandpaper as your final paper will make it a lot easier to hand polish. Metal, going through the processes with paper, metal, paint, plastic. You're able to sand down plastic and use some rubbing compound on that as well, or a plastic polish, and get the same results. A nice gloss finish. But it does take a lot of work and a lot of patience. Now, I don't sit in one place too long. I always constantly keep moving, because the longer you stay on one spot, the more chances are you're going to have a wave in that area that you're sanding. Now, I am overlapping into the area that I did not use the 1500 grit starting paper with, because I am going to polish this area as well. But I'm trying to stay off of all of the metal pieces because I don't want to scuff them. So I'll probably go over this another 2 or 3 more times, depending on what type of a the sheen is going to look like. And then I'll go over it by hand and start hand polishing it. A lot of elbow grease, pretty simple to do. Not something you really want to rush if you want to have a nice job and make this thing look like close to brand new. Alright, so I'm back, ready for a polish. This has been sanded down about 5 times with the 3000 grit sandpaper. I should have all the scratches from the 2500 grit out. And as you can see, it's got a little bit, not a lot of gloss to it, but it has a little bit of a reflection going on that's in the finish right now. And right now it's pretty clean. There's nothing on it besides maybe some of my fingerprints. So I'm going to go ahead with the rubbing compound 3M first stage and start doing a little bit of a rub by hand while using a machine. See if I can bring out this gloss again. All of the scratches should be, basically all the deep scratches that were in this should be gone. Shouldn't be anything inside here at all. Now, a lot of people, when they're doing something like this, they'll end up kind of rushing it, not going through the whole process as far as the sanding goes, and they end up with kind of like a hazy finish where even with the rubbing compound, didn't really remove too much of the sanding scratches and bring back the shine. So you want to take your time with this, and again, you're going to end up rubbing this out quite a few times in order to get the results that you're looking for as far as a gloss, shiny finish. And instead of doing like the whole thing at one time, it's kind of better just to do little areas at a time. And like I said, with this 3000 grit sandpaper, it kind of helps bring back out the shine a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, and a whole lot easier. So just rubbing this spot here at one time already has a nice gloss to it. And it'll also make this quilted top pop out a lot more, and the more times you go over it, more times you're going to start bringing a little bit out. Now, I went over this spot one time. I'm going to do it in patches and kind of blend it all in to get everything to kind of come together, sort of say. The bad thing is I'm trying to hold this thing and do this at the same time. Now, getting around these controls is very, very difficult, but it can be done. So I should have taken the knobs off of here, but these are countersunk, So I don't really need to get into the countersunk area of the controls. I do need to get around them.